Welcome to the podcast, Speaking to Influence, Communication Secrets of the C-Suite. I'm Dr. Laura Sicola, your host, and our focus is on mastering communication as an essential leadership skill so that you can command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal in any context. My guest this week is Glenn Hofmann. Glenn built and led the 100-person corporate data and AI team at New York Life for 7 years. This included creating data science solutions for all major functions, such as sales, marketing, underwriting, customer service, and more. He also had a model governance and AI ethics team. I think we could use a little bit more of that in the world nowadays, as that gets to be a bigger and bigger field. He left New York Life in late September and is now ready for the next chapter in analytics leadership in business. He's got his PhD in statistics and an MBA from Wharton as well. Glenn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, what is a fun fact about you other than being an AI expert?
Well, I guess one that people enjoy is that I used to be a figure skater. In grad school I did a lot of figure skating. I skated in a couple of ice shows, and so yeah, that was I guess I had time in grad school.
Oh my goodness, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that before. That's amazing. So, what was the most fun ice show that you ever skated in?
Oh, it was nice. I was in a team, a sort of synchronous skating team,
Sure.
and we did a holiday show, which was it was a lot of fun. Kind of dressed up, and lots of kids in the audience, having fun with it. So yeah, it was awesome.
That sounds like a lot of fun. How long did you do figure skating?
A couple of years. Started in I guess I started early in my grad school career, and then advanced through different levels. And the last 2 years, I think I did some performances.
So now I'm curious, so this was not something you started until you were already in your 20s or so. It wasn't like you were doing a lot of skating as a kid or had an older sister who was in it, or.
I mean, I skated a couple times on like a local pond as a kid, but that doesn't really count. So I really learned how to skate, in my early 20s, and then did that for a few years. Yeah.
And who is it who talked you into figure skating of all things, as opposed to ice hockey or just for fun?
Nobody did. It was like, when I was in every quarter, I guess, in grad school, I looked at the big course catalog, and my goal was always to take about half of the classes in my major and take about half of the classes in something else. And I always looked for different physical education classes, and I took a bowling class and a tennis class, and one semester I came across skating, and I'm like, okay, I'll take a skating class, and I took skating 1 and skating 2 and figure skating 1 and figure skating 2, and eventually I graduated to being on a performance team.
That would never have occurred to me, but that sounds like so much fun. I'm kind of jealous. I wish it had. Do you miss it?
Fun. Yeah, sometimes. I still go to the ice rink occasionally and practice a little bit. Yeah.
To show off some of your skills.
Yeah, I mean, I'm rusty now, but yeah, I still remember some things. Yeah.
My guess is that rusty for you is still about 87 times better than the average person who, like me, would just be stumbling all over themselves. So I still like watching. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. Now, with all that aside, what's something that you wish, tell me more about you, and what's your 30-second elevator pitch?
Well, I mean, I'm excited about my career. I'm excited about, the next step of my career. I mean, what drives me is really, I'm a data and analytics guy, and I've been doing that a long time. But what drives me is maybe two things in that, right? One is creating business impact from data and analytics, whether that's in, enhancing sales or detecting fraud, or building better marketing campaigns, or so something that materially impacts the business from analytical automated decisions that we can make from models and such. So that's a big one. And then the other thing is team leadership, right? So I've built and led significant teams, and just seeing people thrive and flourish in the team, helping people advance in their careers, whether they're very junior from like an internship or an associate level, or they're more senior at like a director level, helping them, get to the next step and making progress in their careers. I think that's really rewarding.
That sounds, that's what we want in our leaders, is people who want to create more leaders under them, raise up, excuse me, others below. Then what's something that you wish more people understood about your role or your industry? And how do you see your role in changing this perception? Who do you talk to make that difference?
Yeah, I mean, lately, AI has been a hot topic, not just in the analytics community, but in the general population, as well. With sort of OpenAI taking their solution public, about a year ago. I'll give you an example. One of the things that happened, I get invited to a lot of internal meetings to talk about AI. So I was invited to a staff meeting of the communications team. I had sort of a prep call with my communications contact, and he said, well, you got to be careful because there's some nervous people in the communications team. They think that they may be losing their jobs to AI, or, it will really change their job a lot. So I went there, and I talked a bit, and I did quite get questions in that direction, and I found myself sort of talking to what I think is a misconception, is that AI is like an intelligence. I think that the name is kind of a misnomer. I mean, they call it artificial intelligence, but it really isn't, right? It really, when it comes down to it, it's just a model, highly parameterized model, but just a model that predicts the next word, the next sentence, the next paragraph that follows whatever prompt you put into that system, right? So it's really just predicting a piece of text that comes next. It's not really intelligent. It's just doing that, knowing all the data that it has ingested. So I, the way I spoke about it was like, well, think of it as a tool that you can use to do certain tasks in your job a little bit better, but it's definitely not it's not a human being that, or not an intelligence that's going to compete with you for a job. So I think that's important, and I think that sort of myth gets publicized by some of the companies that build these models, and they talk about what's called artificial general intelligence, which basically is a sort of the synonym for an AI that can act like a human in many things, and that's more of an aspiration than a reality, right? So they use that to motivate their employees and kind of motivate their field, which is very specific, but it's an aspiration. Today, it's just a tool that helps people do certain pieces of their job, a little better.
So you were speaking with the communications team, and there are many people on the call at the time who were starting to feel concerned that their jobs are going to be replaced in the not too distant future, potentially by something that the company was creating at that point. So when sharing that it was not so much intelligent as algorithms and predictive models, did that help? Did that allay fears?
I believe so. I think, two things that helped, like, sort of pointing out, well, all right, an AI can do, it can write fairly well, but it can't think, right? And it can't, sort of be critically analytic about things, So I think pointing out what it can do and what it cannot do helped. And also kind of, pointing out the tool nature of it. So I guess the phrase that I like and that I used is, an AI is not going to replace you in your job, but somebody who's using an AI might, right? So don't be that person that doesn't know how to use an AI. That might be a problem.
Interesting. And so these are not people who are tech people, but these are people in the comms team. No, so people in the communications department need to learn how to use AI.
When you think about people in comms teams, right, they're writers, they're editors, they're content creators, they're so that's what they do, they're very good at that, and all that they do media things, right? They do interviews and things like that. So they're very good at that, and certain pieces of their job, like writing a draft of something new, an AI can definitely help with that. But then putting the final piece together and polishing it, yeah, that's still a human task.
Sure, the finesse and the nuances of it, and even knowing what questions to ask to be able to get the right data, the right content out. You have to frame. I'm learning more and more in the AI space about just the art is in framing the prompt.
That's right. Yeah, it's called prompt engineering, and that's something that I think we all have to get a little better at. I mean, we're all going to use AI for various things, and including writing. And so we have to get a little better at formulating prompt, right? It's sort of like 10 years ago we had to learn how to use a cell phone, touch screen cell phone, and if you don't know how to do that today, that would be pretty bad, I think, for any job. So, this is similar.
Right. Or I think about it as how when search engines sort of first came out, you couldn't just ask it. Nowadays, you can just talk to Siri, or you can go to Google and type in whole grammatical questions like, what is the population of this country, and or those kinds of things. And now it'll just spit out 12 billion answers to the same thing. But before, you had to use key phrases and Boolean operators, and you had to know the syntax about how to get it to answer, to provide you the information you were looking for. So I feel like we're still kind of at that stage with the AI. Is that a reasonable analogy?
We are, yeah. I think it's a good analogy. I mean, that will change and evolve. I mean, it's been changing so much that will change and evolve about how you get the best information. But just like other technologies have gotten better over time, it's just that we can't ignore them. By ignoring them would be a problem. That might cost people their jobs. But growing with them and using them as appropriate is a good idea.
Now, was there ever a time when you thought you did a great job of explaining something, only to have the listener look at you like a deer in the headlights?
Well, I don't know about a great job, but I did have I did have sort of a different experience recently. I was out in California for a couple of conferences, and I as a favor to a friend, I offered to do sort of a guest session at Stanford, and it was sort of a class on gender and technology. So I was sort of the guest session speaker for this is an undergraduate class on gender and technology, and I talked about models and model bias testing for like things like gender and race and whatnot, and insurance. And that was all nice and good, but I think I didn't really know the audience very well at all, which was a bunch of undergrads, which is not my usual audience.
Sure.
And I probably I mean, some people were active and kind of engaged, but most people probably weren't that engaged. And I'm not sure that went all that well. I think I misjudged like how much of an entertainer I need to be for that kind of audience, right? So it's sort of a know your audience, and maybe talk beforehand to some people who know that audience better than you do, to figure out what you should really focus on. And I think I was probably I was trying to be engaging, and it would have worked for maybe a more an older audience, but I think for that audience I wasn't entertaining enough.
Isn't that funny how we have to really? I've talked plenty of times about infotainment, which is distinct from content light. Content light being fluff and not much actual value involved, but infotainment is we can't just sit there and data dump information on people. It doesn't hold people's attention. And nowadays we're so used to having entertainment at our fingertips perpetually on our cell phones. Whatever we're most interested in, we can pull up right now. And it's really hard to maintain people's attention. And I do think educators, I remember teachers, both as a student back in a million years ago, but also when I was a public school teacher a fewer million years ago, but nevertheless a good amount of time before. And so many teachers saying, these kids just want to be entertained. I'm not here to entertain them. I'm not an entertainer. I'm a teacher. And I think that has really become very conflated nowadays. Part of teaching is figuring out how to not entertain, being a clown and silly and telling jokes, but how to somehow make it more interesting and not just informative. And that's a tough line for people to walk. Do you think that that's something that you've figured out how to do since then?
Uh, I mean, I figured it out for certain audiences, but certainly not all audiences, right? I think it depends that the sort of information density you can put in there, depends, and the entertainment value you have to put in there depends. But you can't, you can't communicate anything unless you keep people's attention. So you
Yes.
do have to do, enough of the entertaining and making it interesting to keep people's attention, because that's the only way that they will listen to you. So I think it depends on the audience, but it's an important component. I mean, especially it's that one was in person, but on Zoom it's even more important, I think. I mean, I've taught some classes to professionals on Zoom, and one has to organize things entirely differently than than in person.
It is. And of course, in Zoom, it's not even like people are looking under their desks at their phone and you can tell who's just not looking up and making eye contact. Zoom, people don't even have their cameras on. If they do, they can still multitask and just put your screen on in the back someplace, but they're checking email or working on a spreadsheet or something like that. It's really hard to tell if people are listening while you're talking. So it's a challenge I think many people can relate to say the least. Now, what about I think this is a good time for you to perhaps challenge our audience, because you just shared a challenge that you experienced. This is a time for our listener 24-hour influence challenge. So Glenn, how would you like to challenge our listeners today so to have them take one step that they can complete within 24 hours to have more influence?
All right. So I mean, obviously, there's lots of things we could do, but let's do one thing very specific and say, this is sort of obvious, but we're on a podcast right now. I'm speaking on a podcast. There's nothing special about me here, so you can do the same. So I'm sure you're listening to some podcasts. I mean, you're listening to this one. You're listening to other podcasts that you like. So pick a podcast in your area that's I mean, roughly where those people, at your level or maybe slightly above your level that are speaking at these things. Write to this. Think of something that you would talk about on this podcast. Write to the host or to the organizers, and make your pitch and see if you can go on there and speak and be more influential to the people in your field.
And there's all right. So everybody out there, did you get that? I love that you're listening. We want you to keep listening to podcasts. Consider being on it. So reaching out, finding, so the 24-hour, the first stage 24-hour window, Glenn, is it identifying a podcast you'd speak on? Is it actively reaching out and
I
already
would say it's
connecting?
three things. It's identifying a podcast or two. It's finding a topic that you want to talk about on that podcast, and three, sending a message to the host or the organizing company of it.
All right. So
I think that's doable in 24 hours.
it is. I'm sure there are many people who go, whoa, that's huge. And it's actually not. I having done this for as long as I've done it, I'm going to help you cheat. So this is your 24-hour influence challenge, but I'm going to help people out there find a real easy, and I'm not getting any kickbacks for this one way or another in case anybody wonders, but there are some really good resources out there. For example, there's a website called podcastguests.com, and you can just go to the website, and it's like a yellow pages or match site where as soon as you get there, it'll say, are you a host or are you a guest? And if you want to be a guest, you just go to that side. And then there's two options, of course. One, you go in and you fill out your own profile, and they give you a couple of fields to fill in. It's not even as complicated as filling out a LinkedIn profile. So, you put a little thought into it, but it kind of asks you what kind of stuff you want to talk about. And you can go also look at the hosts section, or at least see what shows, I should say, are listed in the directory. It's a directory. That's what we're talking about here. And just see what kinds of, under the business or under the healthcare or under the gender and personal relationships and whatever else kind of topics, but find something that looks interesting and see what they look for in their speakers. And when you see what they look for in their speakers, you can go, you know what, that fits me, or I fit that description. I'll click the link and say apply, and they make it super easy, super fast. And I think that'll help you to execute on Glenn's suggestion. So, and of course, you'll see speaking to influence there. So feel free to say hi. So how's that, Glenn? Can I help? Can I give people a cheat sheet for your
That's
test?
great. I learned something new. I didn't know about that website, so that's interesting. I might have to check that out myself.
There are quite a number. So I think even if you just go to Google and type in podcast directories, speaker directories, show directories, apply to be a speaker, those kinds of things, you'll find plenty. But once you're there, it becomes very easy to see new ones all the time that are being promoted, and just to do a quick scan and say, is there anything here, any shows that I would want to be a guest on? Lots of fun. So, all right, I'm telling you some of my inside secrets. Now, your turn for a few more inside secrets. Glenn, what is a time when you felt super nervous before a presentation or speaking engagement, and what communications related lessons did you learn from it?
So yeah, I'm usually not that nervous as a public speaker, but there was an event a couple months ago that I put on at the company. It was a half-day event on generative AI that I put together because I saw there was a lot of demand for that type of information. So it was like a 4 or 5 hour event, and I had multiple roles on it. I did give sort of the first talk, kind of explaining the topic in a bit more detail to a lay audience, because anybody at the company could attend. And then I was also the moderator for 2 panels, where I had brought in some external speakers. So so in my first session, which I think was about maybe 45 minutes, I in the beginning I was very nervous, and it sort of took me by surprise. But I think it was because the audience was very large. So this was the biggest conference room in the building, was packed, about 300 people. And then there were another 500 people, online, on the Zoom link. Mm-hmm. So I knew that, and, that seemed like a lot. So I think the first, 5 to 10 minutes, I was pretty nervous. I was sort of, stumbling along a bit, and then after that I got comfortable, and I was fine, and I got a lot of compliments for the whole thing afterwards. But that sort of alerted me that I should probably practice the first few minutes of my my talk, much more than the rest of it, because the first 5 minutes is when I need to get used to being in front of this audience. And it's also when the audience needs to get used to me and see if, they made a good choice of actually attending this, because people took out of their time out of their busy day to come to this event, which is not required, or, they just did have their interest. And, in the first 5 minutes, I kind of have to, back to this entertaining conversation we had earlier, I have to at least validate their decision, right? They made a decision to come to what's potentially 4 hours of their life. And I have to, make them feel good about that, hopefully in the first 5 minutes, and have to make them excited about, what's to come in the next couple hours. So that's, that's a lot to do, and then probably requires some additional practice, especially of the first 5 to 10 minutes.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I actually have a label for that. Then it's what I refer to as the 60 to 60 rule. And if anybody has a copy of my book, Speaking to Influence, out there, there's a little section, you can find it in the table of contents, on the 60 to 60 rule. But the idea behind that, and you're so right, your instincts are spot on, is that in the first 60 seconds, the audience is you're going to set their expectations for the value that you're going to give them, what to expect from you in the next 60 minutes. So if you don't have time to practice the whole thing, to your point, so many people do get nervous in the beginning, and then eventually they get into their groove, and then they're okay. So if it takes a little while before that groove kicks in, so to speak, practice that part, so that you have a chance to get on, what you want to say. It's not stumbly, bumbly, fumbly in the beginning. And you're totally confident that you know exactly what words need to come out of your mouth. And then by the time you need to do a little bit more ad-libbing, you're more comfortable and you're confident. So you're completely solid advice on that front. So hopefully everybody's going to take note on that one and practice that first couple of minutes. If nothing else, preparation certainly is key. Now, what about a time when you needed to inspire others? What happened there?
Yeah, I mean, I do that a lot, but I'll pick a recent situation I was in. So, as Laura said earlier, I'm looking for a job right now. I left my previous employer looking for a new opportunity, which involves, interviewing. And it involves, being a little more humble than I probably needed to be before. So I was interviewing at a company in person 2 weeks ago, and it was many interviews, and one of the interviews was with somebody who would be my employee, if I was taking that role. And so he sort of got to interview candidates to be his future boss, and he asked me about how I would help people in their careers, the people on my team. And so that was like, so I had to inspire him basically, to sort of believe in me as his next leader, right? Which is it's definitely an inspiration challenge. I did a few things. I talked about, career pathing and how I would, the kinds of technical and non-technical career tracks that I've created and past teams that I led. I talked about education, sort of fostering, additional degrees as well as non-technical, communications training, soft skills training, and so on. And then I talked about, the tracks to get to management and the different steps that I provide for people to find out whether they want to be managing other people or not, and the opportunities for that. And then I sort of finished it off with basically pointing to specific employees on my past teams that have followed me from job to job several times, and they've done quite well in their careers, as sort of saying, well, okay, whatever I just told you, that's not just theory, but it actually happened, and here are some people that have benefited from that, and they're really doing well. So that was my attempt to inspire what might have been a future employee of mine.
And may still be, you never know. And now, did you feel like he responded in a way that showed some inspiration?
I think so. Yeah.
Did he respond? Did he say anything that showed interest in a particular part, or could you tell by his facial expressions that anything was registering? Were you able to read the audience?
Yeah, I could tell by facial expression. I could also tell by follow-up questions, right? So he had some follow-up questions on the management track, things. He had some follow-up question on the training. So I guess that he was interested.
Sure. And I think that's important, right? Is when we're trying to read an audience and trying to gauge, are we having an impact? Is what we're saying landing? Do they think we're insane? Do they have no idea what we're talking about? Are we boring them? Is there something else? So it was great that you were getting the follow-up questions. I think that says a lot about what direction they want to take the conversation after you're done with those kinds of things. So super, super signpost there for whether the wind is blowing in the right direction. If they're like, yeah, tell me more about this, or God, let's change the topic. Please don't tell me any more about that. That's always a good little hint to take. Now, lastly, let's see. We all have someone from whom we'd like to ask for something like advice, support, or an opportunity, but we haven't worked up the courage to make the ask. What's the time you really wanted to make that ask, but were afraid to do so? And how did you finally decide to pull the trigger?
So, being in the position of looking for a new job, I have to ask a lot of people for a lot of things right now. Which can be a little bit uncomfortable, but you kind of have to get over that. So one specific instance of that recently, like 2 weeks ago, I was a friend of mine had sort of pointed out that there was sort of this person we both know who might have an opportunity that could be of interest to me, and that person was a former boss of mine. So in a past job, I had a boss, and I actually left that job I left to go to a different company. So I basically left him. It was in good faith and all, but so I was kind of hesitating to. I mean, I have his number and we work together, but I was hesitating to call him because I've left him in a past job, and I'm basically asking, for a potential new opportunity, with him. So I wasn't sure how he would take that, and so I hesitated for a few days, and then I said, okay, well, I got to do it. So I texted him, and we ended up having a very nice phone call, and now I'm on his radar, and that's all really good. But yeah, that was definitely that took a little convincing of myself to make that call.
And nobody ever likes to ask for the favor. No one ever likes to ask for the introduction or the information. But I think what you said that was most both simple and impactful was the idea of just get on the radar. He knows you exist. You're on the person's radar. If they don't know that you're interested, if they don't know that you're looking for something, they can't help you. And maybe you're exactly what they're looking for. You just never know. But
yeah, I mean, look, for those of you out there that are, that are in a similar position and maybe are job searching or whether you're currently employed or not, it's a lot of networking. So you have to ask a lot of people just for a meeting, right? It's not, you're not asking for a job. You're just asking for a meeting to catch up, to introduce yourself, and keep it at that level, and things come from that. I mean, some people will be helpful and some people won't, but enough people will be helpful to introduce you to the next person, to make a connection, to tell you about an open job, to tell you about another company that might be interesting, and it just kind of cascades from there, and before you know, you have a ton of networking calls every day.
Time to talk to people. That's pull out that flex that muscle, talk to people. Lastly, what's something that you do to create a little bit more fun for your team?
So I've done a whole bunch of team events. I mean, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, it's always good to get the whole team together to learn and to socialize, but also have some fun together. I think the most fun event that I liked is kind of a cooking. It's a cooking event. So you go to like one of these sort of professional kitchens. They have a few coaches or chefs if you want for you, and they break up the team into a few different sub teams that actually prepare different courses in the meal, right? So there will be a little group that does the soup, and a little group that does the salad, and a little group that does an entree or two, and a group that does a dessert, and you kind of I mean, everybody can participate. It's not terribly demanding. Everybody can chop some vegetables and stir some soup and whatnot, and people can kind of have fun and banter about somebody not being able to how much they cook at home or not, and how clumsy they might be or not, and that's all okay, and then after all that, you sit down at a big table and you eat the stuff that you just made. What could be better than that, right? So I always thought those. I've done that a couple of times. I thought that was a lot of fun.
I love cooking classes. I think they're a lot of fun. I try to take one every now and then, just experiencing new things together, and new flavors, new conversations. And look, you get to eat at the end. What's not to like at that point? And usually there's enough stuff that, okay, if there's one thing that you make and you go, yeah, I don't think I need a second helping of that, fine, go get something else. But breaking bread is always a great way to connect with other people. So thank you for that suggestion. Glenn, how can people learn more about you?
I mean, yeah, just go to my LinkedIn page. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so Glenn Hofmann, New York Life Chief Analytics Officer, whatever. You can find me easily, and connect with me on LinkedIn. I do post about twice a week on LinkedIn on topics of analytics and governance and AI and related topics. So feel free to follow that, and if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And of course, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts so we can help even more people to increase their confidence, presence, and influence. And finally, if you want to download my free guide to equipment recommendations for virtual influence, including my picks for microphones, lights, and more, go to speakingtoinfluence.com. I'm Dr. Laura Sicola, and you're listening to Speaking to Influence, Communication Secrets of the C-Suite. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Laura Sicola, and I want to sincerely thank you for listening to the Speaking to Influence podcast. If you love listening to these episodes as much as I love bringing them to you, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And please go to iTunes right now to rate and review our podcast in order to help us expand our reach so even more people can master the 3 C's to command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal.
Thanks for listening to Speaking to Influence, Communication Secrets of the C-Suite, the show for leaders who want to speak with impact. The hosts, producers, owners, and media distributors of the show make no guarantees that the strategies and information discussed will result in profit or other success and may result in losses. The opinions and statements of the hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the owners, staff, managers, broadcasters, or sponsors of the show. No medical or psychological therapy or personal or professional wellness or relationship advice is offered in the show. You are advised to seek counsel on matters related to your health, family, relationships, job, or other business and legal matters from licensed advisors in those areas prior to making any changes in business or lifestyle. No information provided may be suitable in your situation. As always, take responsibility for the decisions and actions you take, including the reactions they may make in your work, family, health, and life.